What's up, everybody? It's Adam, aka DJ Costa, aka Cali Coaster, aka Coaster Punk 619, aka whatever platform you find me on. I have been a lifelong roller coaster enthusiast, theme park nerd. And when I say lifelong, I almost literally mean that. Some of my earliest memories are visiting Disney parks in Florida, California, as well as international parks like Canada's Wonderland, Marine World, which unfortunately no longer exists near Niagara Falls in Canada, um, Valley Fair, Kings Island, Kings Dominion. I've been all over the contiguous 48 states and Canada visiting theme parks, riding roller coasters, having fun, having a great time. So when I say lifelong, I literally mean it. I'm from New Hampshire originally, spent the first few years of my life growing up there. One of my first roller coaster memories that I can recall without video or photo evidence is riding the Yankee Cannonball at Canopy Lake Park in Salem, New Hampshire. I also remember riding the Firefly roller coaster at the now defunct Benson's Amusement Park in Nashua. And there's video footage of me screaming my guts out and crying my eyes out on the Wildcat roller coaster at the once Rocky Point Amusement Park in Warwick, Rhode Island. The only reason I know that that is real is because the home video footage still exists somewhere. I don't know where it is at this point, but I've watched it numerous times throughout my years growing up and being alive to know that I was, in fact, at one point terrified of roller coasters. Now I look forward to my next thrill, my biggest adventure, and the roller coasters that I rode in the 80s when I was a little child and growing up in the 90s are nothing compared to what the monstrosities are that exist today. I'm talking Siren's Curse, Alpine Fury, which recently opened at Canada's Wonderland, Fury 325 at Carowinds, the Intimidator coasters, which have now been renamed and rethemed at both Carowinds and King's Dominion. I have tamed the beast. Back in the summer of 99, I got the chance to experience one of the greatest night ride coasters ever on the Beast. I rode it during the day and rode it at night. And I have to say, the night ride on the Beast is well worth whatever wait you have after the sun goes down. You do not want to miss that. When I was last at Kings Island, Son of Beast was still being promoted. I don't think groundbreaking had even started yet. I do remember seeing the posters and the promo displays throughout the park announcing the arrival of Son of Beast. Unfortunately, I never got a chance to experience that as it opened after our visit, and I haven't been back since. And I know that it's been dismantled. Banshee destroyed Son of Beast, took over its plot of land. I did, however, ride one of the most interesting and honestly intense and thrilling stand-up roller coasters ever created by Togo. They had several clones that were placed throughout North America. King Cobra was insane. I'd ridden Riddler's Revenge at Six Flags Magic Mountain the year prior when it opened, and I have to say that the much smaller, much more compact, tinier version of Riddler's Revenge that was the King Cobra was literally insane. It was probably the most intense stand-up experience that I had ever had. It was a really fun coaster. I was sad when I found out that it was being removed, but you know, such is life. Things happen, things get replaced, theme parks grow, theme parks replace attractions, theme parks continue to develop. And that's kind of what this video is going to be about today. Um, I was fortunate enough growing up to have a dad and family who were into traveling. We were into going to amusement parks. We loved to have fun. We loved to have a good time. We loved to take ourselves away from the stresses of the day and just go on a ride, have fun, forget about those stresses until the park closed and we woke up the next day and those stresses smacked us in the face again. But you know what? That's how life goes. We just got to roll with it. And hopefully, before long, we'll be on our next adventure, traveling to another amusement park. Um, with that being said, I want to acknowledge a huge milestone in the theme park industry. A few days ago, Disneyland in California, the original Disney theme park, not to be confused with what people think the original is in Florida. No. 70 years ago, on July 17th, 1955, Walt Disney brought to life a dream that he had for years. It finally came to fruition in what we now know as Disneyland, California. And congratulations to Walt Disney Parks and Disney Parks International for this milestone. Now, there have been a lot of amusement parks that have survived a lot longer, that have been around since way before Walt Disney brought his theme park to life. However, Walt Disney was the first to build, design, and create a park with a specific theme or idea in mind. His entire park that he created was built around not only his empire, but his thoughts, his dreams, things that he loved. He was a huge train enthusiast. For those of you who don't know, he actually had a miniature scale railroad built in his backyard. Yes, there are photos. You can look them up online. I'm not the type of creator that'll throw in all that stuff for you. I'm the type of creator that'll talk to you and you just have to listen and believe that those videos and photos exist. I'm not going to throw any BS your way because that's not what I'm about. My video is going to be about my life experiences, things that I have learned, things that I know to be true based on evidence that I have found, but I don't have the luxury of time like a lot of creators do to just sit around and post links, post clips, post photos, things like that. I just want to get this out there because this is something that's been on my mind for quite a while. And I felt with the 70th anniversary of Disneyland just behind me, literally, like it was a few days ago. I don't know when you're going to be watching this video. This video is going to be coming out within a week of the actual anniversary of the July 17th of 1955 opening of Disneyland. But literally, it just happened. So that's why I wanted to get this video out there. I wanted to make it not quick, but put it out there coinciding with Disneyland's 70th anniversary because, again, as a huge theme park fanatic and roller coaster nerd, that is something that's worth celebrating. Now, I have had the pleasure and experience of working at several parks throughout my life. Couple of them as ride operators and another one in the merchandise side, but that's mainly because the park that I was working at the time didn't really have rides that required operators. It was mainly a wildlife park. I'm pretty sure if you know me, you know which park I'm referring to. If you know where I'm from, you definitely know which park I'm referring to. But that park has evolved as well, which again brings me to why I am doing this video. Theme parks, in order to survive, in order to be relevant, in order to keep bringing guests back, they do need to evolve. However, something that I've noticed over the last 25, 30 years or so is I don't feel they're evolving in a way that best reflects what they're about. It seems more and more theme parks are just about getting the next big thrill, that one trick pony that'll bring guests in for that year. but not provide them with an opportunity or a want to keep coming back. And like I said, Disneyland just celebrated 70 years. I'm going to keep saying that over and over again because to me, that's freaking amazing. A park that should not have existed, a park that almost didn't happen, is 70 years old this year. And for those of you who don't know the history of Disneyland, are probably scratching your heads, not understanding what I mean by probably should not have existed, should never have existed. Walt Disney could not get financing for the longest time for his idea. He couldn't settle on a concept. He couldn't settle on anything stable enough that would invite investors and excite investors enough to want to fund his dream. And again, there's plenty of literature, there's plenty of resources out there where you can find that information and know that I'm not just BSing you. These are facts. Disneyland should not have ever existed, but it does. And with that, one of the most famous quotes from Walt Disney himself happened during the July 17th opening of Disneyland in 1955. Now, Walt Disney, he loved to talk to people. He loved to be out in front of the public. He was a great public speaker. He was a great artist. He was a great mind. But still to this day, one of his most famous speeches was this speech right here, Disneyland's dedication speech. To all who come to this happy place, welcome. Disneyland is your land. Here, age relives fond memories of the past, and here, youth may savor the challenge and promise of the future. Disneyland is dedicated to the ideals, the dreams, and the hard facts that have created America, with the hope that it will be a source of joy and inspiration to all the world. Now, that's a theme park dedication speech, but it feels like so much more. It feels more like a presidential inauguration speech. Like that's something a president should say when they're addressing the nation for the first time in January after being elected. And the reason I say that is because those words are so powerful. Those words have depth and meaning. Disneyland was created as a place for you to escape your life, a place where you can feel whole, a place where you can be you, a place where you can just relax, have fun. Who wouldn't want a president to promise that for their country? But I digress. So after that, not on the same day, not in the same year, but down the line, Walt Disney also made another statement that isn't quite as popular, but is well known with Disney fans, especially Disney Parks fans. He went on to say that Disneyland will never be completed. It will continue to grow as long as there is imagination left in the world. Again, powerful words and a promise that he intended to keep. But unfortunately, he was unable to fulfill that promise the way he wanted to. Walt Disney did die before he got to see his grand dream in Florida come to fruition and open up to the public. In 1966, Walt Disney did leave this earth, but he didn't leave us. He left us with a promise that things will get better, things will continue to grow, things will grow to continue to evolve. Nothing is ever going to be complete. And his Imagineers understood the assignment. They literally understood the assignment. Even after he passed, they went on to create such iconic attractions as the Haunted Mansion, Pirates of the Caribbean, Space Mountain, not just in, and those attractions not just opened in California, but they opened in Florida as well, because they knew how important those projects were to Walt Disney, and they wanted to make sure that the world knew how important those projects were. Now, Walt Disney did not create these himself. Again, he had a team of what he called Imagineers, which started out as some of the best story artists and illustrators that he had working for him and his animation and motion picture departments, because that's how he got started. He was a filmmaker, a storyteller, and he brought the best talent that he had with those departments into another department that formed as what's known as WED, Walter Elias Disney. They were the ones responsible for bringing his stories to life through his theme parks and attractions. And in 64, 65, he was invited to bring his team to a global event known as the New York World's Fair, in which he was able to showcase their talents through the attractions that they built. They built a couple. It's a Small World, sponsored by Pepsi, which eventually got transferred into the theme parks as the It's a Small World that we know today. As far as I know, the concept and storyline were pretty much the same from New York to California to Florida. However, there were some minor differences with the outside look, the facade, everything like that, because Florida's hot. You don't really want your guests standing out in the Florida heat for an hour before they can get inside an air-conditioned building. So It's a Small World in Florida was mainly built indoors, while It's a Small World in California almost completely resembles the It's a Small World that debuted at the New York World's 64-65 World's Fair. And another attraction that introduced a concept that was brand new to the company, sponsored by GM, and eventually part of the idea got moved into what later opened as Epcot in 1984 as the World of Motion. But it was the idea of an omni-mover system in which the ride vehicles do not stop. They continuously move. They're known in slang as people eaters for that reason, because they keep the line constantly moving. They're never stopping unless there's an emergency or some other situation that requires the vehicles to stop for a certain amount of time. But that was developed during the 64-65 World's Fair. And though that ride system got moved back to LA to the Imagineering Department, WED, where they developed several rides with that same system. Most notably, because they're still around today, is the Haunted Mansion. And then more recently, the Ariel's Undersea Adventure rides at California Adventure, and then eventually at Magic Kingdom when they updated their Fantasyland. I say a few years ago, it was probably almost 10 years ago. God dang, I'm getting old. Anyway, I digress again. But yeah, those concepts came from a continually moving ride vehicle system. And then also the People Mover rides. Unfortunately, the one at Disneyland does not survive with us today. The structure is still there. The memories remain for those of us who were able to experience it. It was a great way to get off your feet for about 10 to 12 minutes without a long wait. We do miss it. And it was a cool way to view Tomorrowland and part of Fantasyland from a different perspective, because the Disneyland version, you rode above the submarine lagoon in Autopia and what used to be the motorboat cruise. So that was kind of cool. Plus, there were different scenes and stuff where, you could see the inside of Space Mountain. You could go through the queue line at Star Tours in Disneyland, and a couple other attractions on the other side of Star Tours that are no longer there today. Um, One of them is now Buzz Lightyear's Astro Blasters or whatever that's called. And this was also back when the rocket ride at Disneyland was on top of that tower structure that sits in the middle of Tomorrowland between Space Mountain and what used to be Innoventions, which was Star Wars Launch Bay recently. I don't know what it is now. I haven't been there in a few years anyway. My point is Walt Disney knew how to create an experience, how to put on a show, how to keep guests entertained, even if they weren't on a ride, even if they were just standing in line for the ride. There were things for them to see, things for them to experience, things for them to do that kept them from getting bored, because the one thing that theme parks and amusement parks don't want is a bored guest. Why? Bored guests tend to leave early, tend to spend less money because they're leaving early, they're not buying as much food. They really have no interest in merchandise because, if you're bored, you really don't want anything to commemorate or remember that experience by. Plus, they're less likely to come back again and spend more money the next day or the next week or what have you. So that brings me to the meat of this video, which is theme parks do better. Because in the last 30 years, I've seen a huge decline in how you view the guest experience. I'm not saying that you don't try, but in my opinion, you're not trying the right way. You're getting rid of iconic attractions because you don't want to spend the money to keep them running, or you decided that you want to use the space for something new, or you're bored and you feel that the guests are bored too. But rather than finding out why the guests are bored, what the guests want, you kind of take it upon yourselves to eliminate things that the guests really love but would love to see made better. And that's where the guest experience really matters. Disneyland got it right in 2005 when they reopened Space Mountain at Disneyland in California. Now, there was an incident. There were reasons that the ride should have been completely removed, that they could have used the space for something new. But they knew that that ride was so iconic, meant so much to so many guests, and brought so many people into the park. That was one thing that they got right in the last 20 years, in my opinion. Rather than just demoing the entire attraction and replacing it with something new, they found a way to make it new again and make it a little bit better, to change the experience into something that guests are going to want to re-ride. And those re-rides are important because those re-rides put money in the pockets of your investors, your company, what have you, because they're not just going to want to rewrite it that day. They're going to want to come back and rewrite it again, possibly bring friends to ride it with them, maybe for the first time ever. Who knows? And those first time guests that they bring could end up being repeat guests. Excuse me, gotta wet my whistle. But a theme park isn't just about the screams. It's not just about how much money you can generate. Yes, you're operating a business. Obviously, the bottom line, your revenue, your income is why you got into the business. You want to make money. Nobody goes into business because they want to lose money. However, you got to realize that when you operate a business that relies on the public to feed your bank account, you got to make it worth it for them to want to spend that money. I've seen so many videos online about past attractions, about people's reactions to those attractions no longer existing and attractions being replaced by something subpar or creates a worse experience than what was there before. Remember, most of the time your guests come there because they want to experience something. It may not always be they want to experience the most inversions on a ride, one trick pony. They want the fastest coaster, one trick pony. They want the tallest coaster, one trick pony. They want the first of its kind flat ride, one trick pony. Other than those headliner stats, what else is that attraction that you're putting in to replace a classic iconic attraction? What else is that providing? If it's not providing a full experience, when I talk about a full experience should include sight, sound, smell, feel, and thought. You want to get all five of the known senses. I'm not talking about I see dead people senses. That's just ludicrous. I'm talking about the five known senses. Sight, see, or sight, taste, feel, touch, and hear. If you're not enticing all five of those senses with that brand new attraction, why are you spending the money on it? Because if your guests aren't experiencing those senses, chances are, I call it a one trick pony because you got the height. Okay, that was cool. Let's go to something else now. That's not good business sense. Nobody's going to go out of the way. Nobody's going to make plans, especially if they don't live in the area, to do something that does one thing. Okay, it was 400 feet tall. Big deal. Okay, it went 120 miles an hour. I can do that in my car. Not legally, of course, but theoretically I can. It had 14 inversions. Yeah, but I mean, I can roll down a hill doing somersaults and do 14 inversions for free. But if there's a story, if there's scenes that they can experience, if there's certain smells that that attraction has, certain sounds, i.e., onboard soundtrack, this is where Disney is still the pioneer of the theme park experience. However, they are not perfect. They've had their flaws, they've made their mistakes. Only recently have they started to rebound from that. And I'll get more into that on episode 2 if you're interested. When I talk about the theme park that almost killed Walt Disney's dream. And I'm not just talking about Euro Disney. Here in the United States, you may know which theme park I'm talking about. If you haven't been there yet, I'm going to save you the trip. It's about a half day's park. Not a full day like Disneyland was intended to be. It's about a half day park. And it's right across the way from the land that Walt and Mickey built. Stay tuned.